Okay, welcome to the next episode of An Evolving Man. This is the 20th episode. And today I'm excited to be speaking to Chukumeka Chukes Maxwell. Chukes is the founder of Action to Prevent Suicide, CIC, a Devon-based non-profit dedicated to raising funds for community-based programs focused on suicide prevention. Born in London to African and Caribbean parents, Chuke's family emigrated back to Nigeria in 1965, but Chukumeka was then evacuated to the UK in 1967 as a refugee from the Biafran civil war. He is also trained in the hotel industry after school, and he's also done an award-winning delicatessen, and later he's also opened a catering company, and then he's also retrained as a holistic deep tissue massage therapist, and later as a registered social worker. So yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Piers. Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, so we had this interesting connection of, I think it was 6 months ago, one of our friends, I was speaking about my boarding school, and he says, "Oh, I know someone who went there." And therefore we began this conversation. And it was like, "Oh, I'd love to speak to you on my podcast." So yeah, thank you for agreeing to come here.
Thank you. Yeah.
So what I'd love for us to begin is maybe you just sharing a little bit about your own boarding school journey, what it was like for you, and then what's drawn you into doing the work that you're doing now.
Yeah. So we talked about this briefly before our introduction as to whether we'd name the school that we both attended. And I think it's really important because, unfortunately, I've come across a couple of people who have taken their lives by suicide. And I have always loved my old boarding school, but I also am aware of some of the situations that were there, which have now come to light 20, 30, 40, 50 years later. Now, there's a phrase we use often in our suicide prevention work, which is 3 words, which we miss, we dismiss, or avoid. So I know whilst I was at this boarding school, I had to do some of those things to survive. I missed certain things, I dismissed certain things, and I definitely avoided certain things. So the school we went to was a school called Christ Hospital, and we walked around in these robes, which made us look like monks. And later in my life, I'm thinking, actually, it was a bit like that. We had the cloisters, we had the monasteries, we had the yellow socks, and it is known as the Brotherhood. And we, the old blue society, which transcends the world and everything else. So there were about 850 boys there, ranging from 10 and a half up to 18. And so I was there from 1972 to 1979. So really, that was about, a lot of people have passed through my life at that school. When I first arrived at the school, this was the 70s, bear in mind, I found that one of the things, there were only about 4 or 5 Black people there at the school. And I had come from Hackney via Jamaica, via a prep school in Kent. And I struggled really with the energy of being different and being Black. So one of the first things that occurred to me and have since in my life I've looked at is how I internalized racism towards myself. I also recognized how I invented characters to survive. I was diagnosed at the age of 43, many years after leaving school, with dyslexia and dyspraxia. So what that meant whilst I was at school is whilst I could talk about a subject, I could never write about a subject. And I was always put in all the bottom sets. I was always accused sometimes of cheating because I would just be able to talk about something and say, how do you know that? And yet you haven't read or you haven't done this. I had lots of detention. So life at school at one level was all about punishment. Then on the other side, because I was quite strong, quite big, quite fast, and both you and I share the fact that we were both athletics captain, I created this character that I was the fastest person in the school. I was one of the strongest people in the school. And that for me created another shell, another persona to survive. But there was always an underlying reality whereby always feeling a sense of inferiority as a Black person. And that inferiority made me also try and develop a degree of superiority to counteract the bullying and the sense of feeling unequal to the task of my father wanted me to be a little Englishman. He wanted me to go to Cambridge, but I felt very unequal to that task. So years later, having done many things, and Piers has only talked about a couple of things, but yet my journey, I've joked that I'm 61 on tomorrow. And
birthday.
Yeah, thank you. And I have had in my line 3 midlife crises. It seems to happen every 20 years. And the 20 years is facing aspects of myself which have been a form of false persona to create a sense of being in this world. I've also married 2 white women to put me into a situation where I felt I could be seen to be serious within predominantly white society and what I would call middle class to upper middle class society. But that insecurity has created a degree of vulnerability that had to be broken down. So why I'm saying all these different things is that by the time I get to working in suicide prevention, there's hardly an issue that I haven't worked in or felt that does not enable me to have the compassion and the empathy to not fear death, but to confront one of the biggest taboos in society, which, dare I say, kills 1 million people a year worldwide. However, I'm also concerned with the reality of many things that kill people. So I look at the activities that we all do, which create suicidal behaviors and then lending in suicide. Some of them is a much longer term, like eating the wrong things or whatever. You're just going a long way. So I talk about active suicide and passive suicide. So this is almost like a counterintuitive way to deal with how to really focus on living well and well-being. So for me, dying is easy, but living well is much harder. And as the Buddha said, life is suffering. So it's how do we bring that philosophy of compassion, mindfulness, right view, right action, all the Eightfold Noble Path of Buddhism to life, and therefore suicide prevention. So that's my sort of passion.
Thank you for sharing. That sounds like, yeah, I can really resonate with your journey, having been to the same school, but also I've also had that sense of, yeah, by working through stuff, realizing that when I speak to people who are feeling suicidal, it's like, oh yeah, I can resonate because I've been there too. Yeah. So thank you. Was there anything specific that drew you to doing the work with suicide awareness? Because I know you've worked with the NHS as well, and you've trained as a social worker. So was there a point where you saw people coming to you and you thought, right, I mean, there's a real gap here?
No, it wasn't more. It's more like as I've grown older, I've started to recognize that I think I've made choices, but actually the choices have been made for me. Almost like something to get me on what I would call the path. Yeah, I would say that a lot of what I see as my distractions have taken me off the path, but now I utilize them to be able for me to do my work. Because if I hadn't done some of those things, I wouldn't be able to understand. There's a lovely Stephen Covey phrase, which is seek first to understand, then be understood. And so that enables me to deal with some of the sticky, messy issues of life. Yeah. So what happened was, after I was a Christian Buddhist monk in Glastonbury by a person at the time, he wasn't externalized, but now is being recognized by Tibetans as the reincarnation of the Buddha and also as Jesus Christ. And that will come out more in society. But at the time, in 1991, some old blues knew of me going to that place. I really started to look at my life that time. But what it did, it gave me a bit of a breakdown, which some might describe as a breakthrough, because suddenly I had to confront the illusion of my life and the life I thought I was into this other reality that maybe I might have been involved in previous lives, but then up until then, I had no awareness of that's what it was about. So that created a bit of a crisis identity, because my mum died in 2011, and she said to me, maybe when you went off to be a monk, that was the only way you could get your soul back. And then she died a few hours later. So that was really powerful, because it meant that my mother understood that part of my journey, which was really, it's my part of my journey, because without that, it would have been really difficult. So fast forward, leaving the monastery, and I ended up doing 4 years in the ambulance service, where I was privileged and also not privileged to see the human condition of suffering in all of its realities. Suicides. I had to walk along the train stage tracks, picking up body parts when they'd been hit by a train. I had to work with colleagues who'd gone to hangings, people who shot themselves, people who've overdosed on drugs, so much. Some nights I had 3 deaths in a row and I couldn't save them. But what that did for me is made me comfortable with death. And therefore the inkling and the little crack, as Leonard Cohen would say, the crack lets the light get in about the human condition. And then also, how can we move towards solving that? So fast forward a few years, that's why I went off to qualify as a social worker, because in 1979, that's what I wanted to do. But Margaret Thatcher was coming to power. Then I went, no, because I studied politics and economics. I thought we had the same lecturer, a wonderful old boy called Sims. And so I chose not to go into social. I went, I'm going to go off and become wealthy and I'm going to be philanthropist and then give back and everything. But I took a bit of a left-hand path. I got more and more into what I call hell, even though I thought I met James Bond girls, I met models, I met all the hierarchy. I met the Maxwell brothers, who we now know what the Maxwell family have been doing there, because my name's Maxwell. Really intense time. So that part of my life had to be put to bed. The whole New Age movement, where lots of people were doing astrology readings for lots of money and lots of psychic things, but actually creating more problems in people's lives, creating more devotion, creating more cults. And I have evolved in so many cultures, rugby, African, Biafran, Southerner, whatever the cult is. I am tired of cults, by the way. So that was a part of my life as well. Then I went off to university, got in at the age of 41 to read social work, because I left the ambulance service because I was going to see the same people all the time. And I felt, God, if I went off to be a social worker, I'll be able to stop them before. So I have this standing joke, Piers. I say, my first part of my career was in the hotel and catering industry, where I was paid to get people drunk. Then the second part was to pick them up drunk or stop the fights around being drunk. And the third part of my life now is working out why people are drinking in the first place, and also work with the traumas that are in their life. So that's been my journey as well. So I'm not going to pretend I'm a saint. I used to drink, smoke, all of it. And I'm in a sense of trying to purify my life now so that I can be the best version of myself and be authentically who I am, rather than who I try to be, and create that. And I think that's the root of some of the suicidal ideation, is that for men, what do we do? Who are we? I sometimes felt in the past, all I was a sperm donor. All I was a hunter-gatherer. And actually I was doing jobs which I didn't really enjoy, but they were killing me. But I hope that I have the courage to say, I've got to stop this. How could I go to my wife and say, we've got to stop this? So those sort of things, and not being able to reach out, really, really important. So fast forward, I did health promotion, I did community development work in the NHS. And what the NHS are good at is community engagement. They're not so good at community development, because a lot of our systems, like our school, are rooted in the misuse of power and corruption. So it's really, really hard. And then the NHS is rooted in illness. They don't know how to do wellness. Illness is I, wellness is we. Yes, two different contexts, aren't they? Yeah. So it says you're about to raise your hand. No, not now. They're looking at me raising my hand. So I struggled in the NHS because, having been a monk, having had these experiences, having been a bit older to come back in, I decided to try and be more authentic. And in that, what I started to realize, having gone to social work, having been in the ambulance service, that we never really talk about suicide. We never talked about the scale of the issue. And I left the NHS. I was trained on a very 5-day intensive course to become a suicide prevention trainer. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, because I had to confront my attitudes towards suicide. And I've been suicidal when I was 19. My predominant reason for being suicidal is that how you hear me speak now, I've been speaking since I was about 5 years old, but no one will pay attention. Children are to be seen, not heard. School, you're failing all the exams. There's no wisdom. There's a tree of knowledge in schools. There's a tree of knowledge in the works we do, but where we're talking and what we've been doing in our lives, Piers, is working under the tree of wisdom, which is a totally different tree. Yeah, you have to be so humble, you have to study, you have to get smart, you have to be courageous. Not something we've been taught at school. School's about competition. I'm better, I'm faster, and it's destructive to our brotherhood, it's destructive to our sisterhood, it's destructive to the world. So that's what we're going through now. So for me, when you confront that part of yourself, that can make you feel suicidal. But so I was feeling suicidal. I used to drive down the A3, close my eyes and go towards Robin Hood roundabout. I'm still here, a bit like Groundhog Day. He tries to kill himself every day, and he just reincarnates. So I feel my life is a bit like Groundhog. I've driven off the edge of a mountain, not intentionally, but I've had so many near-death experiences, but I'm still here. So we're here for a reason till we, drop again. So I got trained in this course, and I was training, but I was like, man, no, the training has to take place in the community. So in 2017, I had the courage. I left the NHS, took my redundancy pay, set up, it was called Suicide Safer Communities, then changed it to Action to Prevent Suicide. And I'm still believing that the energy of suicide prevention needs to take place in our community, because most people who are feeling suicidal aren't known to their GP or medical services before that they meet 2/3 of people, should I say. So in that, I had that mission. That's why you read out, to raise funds to do it in the community. So the choice of that, and then the real change in my life happened when I went to Canada, to the organization Atlanta, should I say, the organization that does the course is called Living Works. And I met people from all over the world. And suddenly I saw the scale of the issue worldwide. So when I came back to England, I had not only what had happened to me in Canada and America, I had friends all over the world doing the same as I was doing. So it gave me a totally different way of looking at suicide prevention. And from there, I've been doing it ever since. I have only gone back into the NHS of late because most of my trainings have been face-to-face. But now meeting you and many other people, I'm passionate about working with all sectors of society to highlight the issue. I don't want to over-highlight it to make everyone think everyone's killing themselves, but yet I'm shining a light, like you are with boarding school trauma, on people so that we can talk about this, so we can release ourselves from this stigma, taboo, shame, all of it that embodies our very private, and the emphasis on private school system. So we're now going to change it, because we use the word public, but it's not really public, is it? But we are going public now to heal the past. We're going public on the abuse. We're going public on the things we miss, dismiss, and avoid. And we're going public on our own healing crisis. And that, dare I say it, Piers, is how we prevent suicide.
Thank you. Thank you. What would you say the impact has been the last couple of years? It was almost felt that because of lockdowns and things like that, we've not been able to speak up. We've not been able to meet up. I mean, in the summer, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember if I said one of the guys who was in my men's circle, who lives locally, committed suicide. And, nobody knew about that he was feeling that way. And suddenly this happened. And I'm just wondering if you've seen any changes over the last couple of years with what's been happening.
I mean, the scale of the problem is quite intense. Like I said earlier, or might have said earlier, every 40 seconds someone takes their life worldwide by suicide. Wow. In this country, every 90 minutes someone takes their life by suicide. Or was it 90 minutes or 40 minutes? Every 90 minutes, I'm pretty sure. 2/3 more men than women take their lives. So for every 12 men that take their life by suicide, maybe 4 women take their life. The problem is, I think, and I haven't necessarily seen because the figures, but anecdotally, everyone's saying it's going up. There is a difficulty with this. We need real-time surveillance, which is happening in many places in the country. But what we're talking about is, in reality, almost like a stereotyping of men. That how many people do you hear say, men don't talk? They bottle up that. If that keeps on a mantra that's being said all the time, what happens? Men don't talk. Yes. So when you have the shame, the blame, the severe feeling that if I'm found out for this, or if someone finds out that I'm really a fraud, which we're not, we're just going through facing ourselves. Where do you go with that? Oh, some people go, I've got a client, I'm going to see a counselor. That's why it has to be much more public, because that's how in many cultures we would have what we call circles of support. Because you don't, what happens is if you're just dealing with this on your own, what do? So most people through what we've learned through our boarding schools and stuff, you just stiff up a lip, close your mind, don't talk about it, shame, 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 shame. But I'm going to challenge you, Piers, and everyone else who might be listening to this, we've got to stop it. There's a lovely Bob Newhart sketch that says, stop it or I'll put you in a wooden box. We need to watch that. It's like, it's because the recurring thought, I can't have the courage to share this because of the shame that I carry, the shame of something that has happened to me or my perception. And without being able to do that, that's what happened to your friend or colleague. It's like, no one knows. So we all assume we know what's going on for someone else, but we don't. It's hard enough to know what's going on for ourselves. It takes such a high degree of awareness. But what I was saying, if we use our senses, if we use our innate intuition, we know when something's not right. You know, animals who are the kingdom below us doesn't mean we're greater than, they're just the kingdom below us, just like the vegetables are below the animals in the mineral kingdom, vegetable kingdom, sorry, and the mineral kingdom. But everything to me has a sacredness. So if the animals can feel when the human being's not feeling very well, what's the human being meant to be able to feel? It should feel everything. That's how sensitive we really are. So even though we may not know what's really going on with people, we have a sense. So lockdown for me actually had a different effect. It made me reach out to people in a different way. It meant, as I'm looking at you now, I can see you on my screen. I can really see your face. In fact, I've been more intimate through technology than I may have been in the life, because what I feel we did before lockdown, we distracted ourselves through alcohol, through parties. In the East, they say we're lazy in the West because we're so busy that we distract ourselves from what's really going on. Yeah. So when you ask a person, how are you? They go, I'm fine. Or if they say to me, not too bad, that's like warning signal. What do you mean not too bad? But you've got to do it in a skillful way. And it takes time and takes practice. Yeah. So I trust that that's really, really hard. So the damage of COVID has been multi-layered. But for me, for those people who have the courage, I think it's been an incredible opportunity to rethink how we've done life before. It's almost like we could have before COVID, after COVID. And I think we have an opportunity, like we are doing now, to discuss some of the really meaty issues in life and to come together as a group to fix them rather than to bury them.
Yeah. Thank you. So if one of the things I'd love to speak about in this podcast is just some things advice you could give. So someone is feeling suicidal.
Yeah.
What advice can you give to them in this moment?
I would say reach out. I don't care what the scale of the problem is and what you think is the problem is. Recognize to reach out. Also to recognize it never stays. Whatever your problem is, it does not stay. The one thing we can be sure of, if having me tell you not to know, is that everything is change. It's whether we can tune into that change or whether we call it, yes, you might want your pain to stop, but you are worthy of love and belonging. And you need to know that. And the ripple effect that you'd have in everyone's lives for you not being here is really, really intense. So Kevin Hines, who jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge, says to this to people, he says, stop, take a breath, real breath. Breath is life. And then pause. Yeah, you are worthy of love and belonging. Yeah, please do not do harm to yourself and those who care for you, who you think may not care for you. Those who may persecute you, doesn't matter. This is a collective reality, and you killing yourself will harm so many people. This is not a guilt trip. This is the sacred law that I'm trying to share with you. Yeah. Reach out to anyone. Samaritans, 116 123. Google any support there. Put suicide support. Even Siri nowadays on Apple phone, you can say, I'm going to kill myself, and they will tell you what to do in terms of reaching out for people. Yeah. So always recognize for me, there's 2 degrees of separation between us sometimes, and you're never, never, never truly alone. Yeah. That would be my advice.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll put into the bottom of the descriptions, the number 116, 112, and so
123, 116, 123.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a lovely website as well called the Hub of Hope. Not a website, it's a website and an app where you can put your postcode in, and it will show you what mental health services and support services there. So Hub of Hope, which is really good. And there's also another app which I suggest you put on your phone, which also helps you. You can sort of say, when you're in your better moments, it's like, this is things and places you want to do and things you want support with. It's called Staying Alive, a bit like the movie Stay Alive app from Grassroots. Yeah, so those 3 things are the things I always suggest to people. And think about who you can reach out to. Set up a WhatsApp group, set up your men's group, support group, like you just talked about. Do thumbs up, use emojis to show how well you're doing. But remember, it's really important. You are worthy of love and belonging.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So the other area I'd love for you to talk about is sometimes people come to me worried about someone else, and sometimes people don't really know what to do. Some I hear they see someone suicidal, and they just get really worried and anxious, or they just feel frozen. So what can people do? One, I guess, how to spot it, and the other thing is, well, what can they do?
So one of the things that's happened at our boarding school and many other places, we've learned how to numb our pain and our joy. So that's how we survive. In the numbing of life, you can't really feel how someone else might be feeling or intuit how someone else is feeling. So the first thing is actually recognize that a lot of it is about you, who you are as a person. Yeah, you see someone in distress, you see someone homeless, you have a choice. Am I going to give them money, or am I going to go off and say, oh, that person's going to spend money on drugs? You start judging them and all the different realities. Same thing with someone who's suicidal. It's everyone's responsibility, suicide prevention, which means everyone's ability to respond, even if that means calling the numbers I've just given you, or even calling 999. That's something you responded. To do nothing is really, really bad. So that's the first thing. So the second thing is just be aware. Some people might say, very many spiritual traditions, they say, wake up. As you wake up to the degree of suffering, you become more sensitive. So it's what you've observed. I've got this mnemonic, is it called? Or with words, so I call it oracles. So what you observe, what you reflect back to the person that you observe, then you ask the question around suicide, then you care, which includes compassion, acceptance of the situation as it is. Then you respect, which is really respecting the individual's suffering and what's going on for them, the empathy that you need to respond. Then you expand on the ideas you've heard from the person and what you've listened to, so else will listen. And then, E is you expand, and then S, you keep them safe for now. You're not there to rescue them and solve all the problems. Yeah. So it's being alongside, and one of the biggest things you can do is connection. Because if someone's on hell bent on taking their life by suicide, just by connecting with them, you could distract them. Just by connecting to them, they'll know that at least you care. But you mustn't try and rescue. You mustn't try and tell a person what to do. You almost co-create how that person feels safe and loved in life. Yeah. And for some people, that's really hard. Yeah. So it's really important to be so supportive and kind. So it's a bit like, we joke that we end up being a bit like a swan. You're very calm, but underneath you're paddling like crazy. Yeah. But it is about that sense of calmness, because people feel that. Yeah. The sense of connection, people feel that.
Mm-hmm.
When you want to take your life by suicide, you feel so alone. Mm-hmm. There are 8 billion people on this planet. That's a bit not too good, huh? So connection is really, really good. You cannot put the idea into someone's head, yeah, if it's already there. But what you can do is listen to what's going on there. And there's a lovely phrase in one of the Aussie mental health services, I think it says, okay, not to be okay. But like the weather, it's always going to change. This too shall pass. Yeah. It never, never is the same. It's can you and the person who's going through it sit there with the uncomfortability and help each other come through the other end. That's the skill. So we train people to do this, but really, we're training people to be kind. We're training people to listen. We're training people to undo what they've learned. Yeah, so you can get alongside people.
Thank you. Yeah, that phrase, this too will pass. I heard it from one of my teachers, Ajahn Brahm, and a Buddhist monk. And I found that really useful when I was feeling suicidal in my 20s. And I found one of the things I did, I like what you said, when we feel better, I still have it somewhere. I had a suicide list and I'd stick it on my wall. And when I was feeling better, I'd write out a list of all the things that I needed to do when I was feeling suicidal. One was to go and speak to the monks. Another one was to read this book. Another one was to realize this too will pass. And it was like first 5 times I didn't pick this paper up. I was like, no, I'm too stubborn for that. And then gradually I learned, and that phrase, this too will pass, really, really helped me.
And that's with everything in life. If you sit calm enough, it passes. It might be really painful, but it passes.
Yeah.
Learned that on Vipassana meditation. Painful. It was painful.
Yes, yeah. I've never done a 10-day. I mean, I spent 3 years in a monastery, but I always used to think, that would be too tough, being sat for 16 hours or 12 hours a day in meditation. But thank you. So the other question, an area I would love for you to explore is this idea of the difference between how we approach suicide awareness with children and adults. Because I see that children are really struggling at the moment. And I know certainly for girls, I can't remember when I was working in the school, it might have been a friend saying that his daughter was self-harming, and he contacted the school just to say, look, she's self-harming. And the school says, we've had 60 reports of girls self-harming just this year. Whereas boys, it seems to be a lot of kind of suicide. So is there a difference? Is there something, if we're a parent, we see our child?
The same thing is important. Reach out beyond the family. Again, some families get very proud and private. So everything is like reaching out beyond that, and helping. So again, for parents, staying calm, it's really hard. One of the phrases you used there quite often was worry. Worry like a toxic virus. Worry doesn't help. You can worry. It does not change. It's much harder to remain calm and not worry. You might have heard me say, I'm not worried about a person killing themselves. That might sound really cold and counterintuitive, but I'm not worried. I am more concerned about giving them the strength to get through this too shall pass and do what you did maybe, and then really stepping back and recognizing that sacredness in them that helps them do what they do. So the other thing is, I fervently believe and have had experiences of reincarnation. So the problem is, in our culture, we go, this is a baby, this is an infant, this is an adolescent, this is a teenager, this is we all the way through labels. So the way I attend it, whether I'm talking to a old man or a little boy, it's the same. Because I'm trying to talk to the soul in that person. I'm trying to talk to the heart in that person. Imagine you've reincarnated and you're 5 years old and someone comes up to you and talks to you like you're really silly. And how I know this to be true from my perspective is when I was in the ambulance service and someone had a stroke, people would talk to them like babies, and you see the frustration. I used to talk to them normally because that speech center had gone, but the awareness was still in that person. So imagine a baby. So my youngest, who's 15 now, my ex-wife taught a Makaton. And so by the age of 10, 11 months, she was already out of nappies. She could sign, going to the toilet. She could do all these things. And then when speech was needed further down the line, it happened. So my attitude is people know when they're worried, especially for boys and men. I try to, when I'm going out and get caught, say, by a mother, I spend more time calming the mother down before I go anywhere near a son. Yeah. So the first thing to give parents, it's easy for me to say, and I've been in the situation, is to stay calm. Yeah. You and I know that could be a spiritual battle going on for the child's soul. Yeah. So that's the first thing. Then secondly, yes, all the research peers show, don't send kids to school till they're 7. So what do? Send them at 4. And then we tell people you're going to work till you're 70. You and I had 20 weeks holiday a year. How many days do they get? 26. I think there is a reason why slavery creates anxiety. Yeah, as Bob Marley said, free yourselves from mental slavery. No one but ourselves can free our mind. But reality, we're breeding people to keep our economy going. So that's going to create anxiety. So, and our parents have bought into it because they have the big mortgage. They need to pay the mortgage and they need to pay the fees. Where is the love in all of that? Yeah. Where is the connection? Where is the ability to allow another person to invention to come forward that same as yours in collaboration rather than competition? So that's the world we're moving in. So in the way I look at suicide prevention, everyone's suffering. I never know where it's going to come from. Don't assume, because that makes an arse out of you and me. And just stay open and responsive, because you never know who is going to be put in front of you for you to save their life. So one of the ways I've learned how to do that through the pain of my racism and stuff was because how I dealt with racism after a while was just to become friendly for people, even the people who used to beat me up. And in the friendship, when I almost developed a form of joy, it became detached. So that reality has helped me, because it's like, how do I still care but stay detached? To this date, as far as I know, I haven't lost anyone to suicide. So sometimes people have come and talked to me, and I've been friendly, optimistic, and they've come back later and said, I was feeling suicidal, but now you've changed my mind. So sometimes not knowing what you're doing is much, much better, because you can be really authentic in the moment.
Thank you. That's interesting. I'm reading, I was going to get a quote from this book earlier, but he says in there that this is almost this thing between men and boys, but I feel this relates to what the work you're doing. He's saying almost a man, certainly a father, he gives something to his son which is almost invisible.
Yeah.
It's energy. And it almost sounds like that's what you do by just being calm, holding the space for them.
Yeah.
You're almost giving them that permission to just to be.
We've formed something, a bit messy here. We've formed something within schools called natural helpers. And let me try and show you natural helpers. Can you see that?
Yeah. Cool.
And then we've got a little logo designed by a lovely 23-year-old person,
Yeah, great.
So the reason why I'm showing you that is because for years I've been going, right, I'm going to set up suicide first aiders, mental health first aiders, domestic violence workers, all of it. The messy, horrible subjects we're dealing with in life. But in reality, if we just become more natural, we will be able to respond. So my phrase now is to try and create communities of natural helpers. A bit like the old, like one of our old blues was head of British Heart Foundation.
Right.
And then before that, he was head of the Charities Commission. And he instigated, and it's happening more now, to log where all the defibrillators are in the country.
Yeah.
So that can help with heart attacks. 17.5 million people over the world die of heart attacks and cardiovascular disease, compared with 1 million of suicide. Yeah. So that's why this is a really important issue on all levels. But The reason why I'm saying that is in that there was almost like, and we've developed this as well, the map of hope, to show that there's more support out there through people being trained, through acts of kindness, through support on many levels. It's all out there. So the more we talk about this, the more in the community say, okay, me too, I've lost someone to suicide. Me too, how can I help? Me too, I'm frightened to talk. You break the veil, you break the stigma, you sort the taboo out, and then we start to save more and more lives.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Locally, in Halifax, there was a movement started a few years ago called Andy's Man Club.
Yes, I know them very well. They got them down in Devon.
Yeah, and I think their thing is about speaking, about men actually speaking up and having a space to talk.
Yeah. I don't know how long you've been involved in your men's group, but I haven't really been involved, partly because, again, our boarding school, I don't need personally to sit with a bunch of men. I need to be able to relate to women. I want us to sit in a circle together. I want us to understand each other better. I want men to show their vulnerability to their women. I want women not to think of us as trophies or us to do the same to them. You know, I know that we're more similar. This is about the law of love, not about the law of separation and difference. And then, or if we're going to sit separate, like I might sit with a bunch of Black people, that is only doing that to move towards a synthesis between everyone. Otherwise, I'm buying into the white privilege, I'm buying into male superiority, I'm buying into female superiority. It's all illusion. And we need to bust that illusion in ourselves. And it's hard if I've never sat with a woman and understood periods. It's hard if I don't understand the menopause. Hard if I don't understand that a woman's brain changes when she has a baby. Or before she has a baby. So these are the things we need to start to understand life and not make every issue, social, political, whatever, into a disease. We've made social issues medical problems, and we've tried to separate the mind, mental health, physical health. It's all mind, it's all interlinked. And we need to have that discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for me, with men's groups, I went to the Mankind Project in 2016. And when I was there, I just realized how terrified I was of men.
Yes.
And I'd learned at school to not talk. I was very shy. I was just looking at a photo before this call, like you, I was really into rugby. And one day, Will Carling, the England captain, came to do training at the school. And there's a picture of me sat next to him. And I'm just so terrified. Kind of, my head's down. I'm like, oh, you know, bless. And I was thinking, I didn't talk to people. I kept it all inside me. I kind of had this weight. And that's why I, struggled with suicide in my 20s, because I didn't let it out. So I think that was my thing. That's why I struggle with men's circles. Because of that vulnerability. I think one of my biggest struggles over the last few years is having friendships. Because of what happened when I did have friendships, that I lost people either to suicide or they died. So, or just at school, I had acquaintances, but not necessarily friends.
Friends. And I think, Piers, you've hit the nail on the head. Something really important we need to look at more in our society is that in Buddhism, we know that everything is impermanent. What causes suffering is our illusion that everything is permanent. And so even death is part of that impermanence. Yes, with all our empathy and everything, we'll do everything to stop that from happening. But because we don't know about impermanence, really know about it, everything becomes painful. And you just mentioned it there, because that pain stops you from then connecting to people in a different way. I said to people, I'm frightened of people. So I've had to work really hard to be friendly, almost to the point of being over-friendly. And then they're suffering in that, because you can't be so friendly to everyone. It's like I've got thousands of friends on Facebook, thousands of acquaintances in LinkedIn, but yet I might be just as linked with all those people, but just not know it. I don't necessarily need them on those methods. And the same thing again but I have found it very beneficial in different, I feel sometimes like my life's like quantum leap. You ever see that? Where the guy leaps in and that happens there, and then you leap out and you go, whoa. So I'm still in that search for that real deep sense of knowing myself and therefore seeing people as a broader family. So the way I'm dealing with that now is deepening my spiritual practice and seeing everybody as part of this incredible big family. And it was like when we connected, you remember how many synergies we had? It was off the scale, man. It was like, how could that happen? You know, even with the years apart. So it was really interesting. And then after the call that we had, someone sent me a picture of me playing rugby for Richmond versus Oxford University. And I looked at it and I was like, I couldn't recognize myself because, you know, I was quite good, but I didn't recognize myself because it's that looking at myself and that aggression, that Chukumeka, that Max, that big, strong winger, that fast person, it was a very vulnerable person. Yeah. How many sports people, how many celebrities, how many entertainers, how many artists are so vulnerable? It's almost like I heard a teaching of the Buddha, and this is going to be counterintuitive. Through fame, your fame can come through hatred. Yeah. So look at Hitler. How did he hate? But he became so famous. Yeah. Look at Genghis Khan. Look at Alexander the Great, who might be our prime minister. Who knows? And you know, so hatred, not necessarily, but yet we celebrate that fame because we're really kind, loving, and I like that phrase: gentle men and gentle women. That's our essence. We are children of God. We are children first, and supposedly adults later. But mostly what we see, and that's why I think suicide also is quite hard, is that we see our inhumanity. And if you see inhumanity, you think, well, I'm better off out of here. But my job, our job, is through our hope, through our love, and love isn't an attachment. We confuse love with attachment. So what you're talking about was really about attachment. Love is that person might die. It's okay, I'm still here. I carry on. Oh, that person might live. That person might be in my life now for 9 months or 25 years. But I know at the end of it, if I haven't done my work, I will cry and cry and cry and feel it. But it doesn't stop me from crying. I cried when my mum died, but I've done enough work to recognize she had a good death. It doesn't stop me from occasionally I could be talking about her and tears will suddenly well up from her. I go, ooh, where's that from? Yeah. So, but I think impermanence is something we all need to learn.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, this too will pass. Yeah. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and there was a couple of questions that come up as you've been speaking. One is how to stay calm, because sometimes I hear people and they go, I have no idea. It's not something we learn.
So it's absolutely right. And I'm going to challenge you to tell me what do you do in the morning?
Well, I get up, I meditate, I do breath work, I do yoga, exercise, I learn. Yeah, I do about, So
you've answered your own question. We've got to do it. We're not taught that practice. Imagine our school. You wake up. Yes, we used to maybe go to pray, but imagine we did start the day with meditation. Imagine we started the day like some schools in China with Tai Chi and yoga.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine?
That would be great.
Can you imagine? Seriously, we need to imagine, because that's how we're going to heal this stuff. Otherwise, we're just creating more and more competition, anxiety, and those who unfortunately might join the military or whatever are sent to kill, and it kills the soul. So our jobs now, Piers, is to defend the soul. There's no shortcut on this. If I don't meditate, I'm not able to stay calm. If I don't slow up, I'm not able to stay calm. If I don't mindfully think about what I'm saying at times, I haven't rehearsed this, but if I'm not mindful, I'm going to channel shit into people. Yeah. I can stay calm as well by not speaking, because that can create more of like a hurricane. So it's those things that you're already doing. And that's what's also really nice. It's a connection to know that, yes, you're hosting this course, but it doesn't matter whether you're the host or the person on it. We have to do these things because it trains our body. Another thing recently, if you ever see the work of Dr. Emoto. Yeah. So what does he say? We're 70% water. So you see those pictures where people go, I love you, I hate you. Watch our language, because they will form crystals of geometric beauty or crystals of Yeah, hell on earth.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no shortcut. This is the science of God. This is the science of well-being, eating right, thinking right, positive psychology. It's all synthesizing with many different disciplines. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how you stay calm. But if you don't have right view, if you don't have right activity, you'll get into conspiracy theories, you'll worry. And that's the energy that's affecting people.
Mm-hmm.
So breath, take a breath. Someone used to say to me as well, before they made any decision, take two sleeps. Sleep on it twice.
Yeah. I think I heard a Buddhist monk say that. It's like, before you do anything, go to bed and then make the decision the next day.
Yeah.
And that interesting. I was doing some studying yesterday about psychology, and one of the leading psychiatrists was saying that people who have trauma, so most people, their oxygen levels are 98%. People who've been traumatized, it's down to 93 or 94% oxygen levels, saying that when they're in freeze response or when they're kind of really traumatized, it goes down to something like 89. So what you say about taking a breath, and what they say there is like one long continuous breath in and out. And I found that fascinating, because I noticed in my 20s when I was suicidal, someone would come into the office and they'd go, "Piers, you're not breathing." And I'd be like, "No, am I not?"
And there's also therapies which will also help with the concussions and all the things in life. Is the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. So one of the things I'm looking to do is share that with people, is get that where people, like the bends, they go in and they get forced oxygen because our cells aren't oxygenated enough. Yeah. So a lot of the things we're talking about, we're expecting people to heal without the wisdom and the knowledge of things that are going to help them heal, like good food. I'm on a carnivore diet now. Good exercise, pure water. I'm off alcohol altogether. And I've had to will myself because I love my Prosecco. I love my champagne. Stop it. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to end up in a wooden box again. So it's all of these things. It's a discipline of which then I can be a disciple to the higher level, God consciousness, whatever. Yeah. It's hard because there's a lot of things which are here to seduce us, but create suffering. No judgment in it. It's a mindful way. Then we go into that higher flow. No superiority, no judgment on others for doing what they do. But this is the way we've got to save people, by helping them with their diet, helping them with their exercise, helping them with their online reality.
Thank you, Chukes. Yeah, I agree totally. What comes to me is one of the things which helped me at CH was after my friend committed suicide when I was 14. I went and stayed in the woods for 3 months, Shelley Woods, and I built a den because there was no one there to support me. There was no one, and that's the reason I didn't commit suicide as a 14-year-old is because I had that place in nature, and I'm hearing more and more, and I find that myself, in the summer, I was down in Menfest, just 4 days barefoot on the land, a group of 150 men. It was like, we're like, oh, wow, I feel great being in nature. So
that's what I'm trying to do as well. I'm trying to buy a farm so we can do that, look after men and women in respite in nature. And there was something that you said there, Piers, that I suddenly thought we needed to address. I think the work that you're doing around boarding school trauma is really important. I think we have a collective trauma. I think there's a collective trauma in the country, which we don't really address. But I think they're really important. I think our school would be open for us to highlight that and take what seemingly could be very negative, because we've talked briefly about that, to show that there is a transformation. Because I was shocked to find in one of the books around boarding school how one of the young boys took their life from suicide because he was going to be publicly flogged. Now, when we look at reincarnation, whether it's 1700s or 2021, it's still the same till we really heal. So I think it's important that both you and I at some stage approach the school, and many people that I know, because I know another woman who lost her son. He was at CH. He didn't take his life at CH, but he took his life afterwards. CH, by the way, for those online, is Christ Hospital. And I think it's important. And I actually wanted then, after, I want to go to all the other boarding schools. We need to shine a light, and we need the culture of privacy to be into a culture of collaborative healing. Because I know many in their 70s and 80s now, if they could just really, truly be heard and have an apology, it would be very much important for part of their healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And interesting, going into schools. Yes, I'd definitely be up for that. Definitely. I would be really up for speaking. And I almost feel as well at Menfest this year, there was 20 of us in circle. We were all ex-boarders apart from one.
Okay.
And the amount of tears and transformation just by us sharing, each man just 3 minutes we spoke.
Yeah.
But the amount of tears, one story led into the next.
Yes.
And it was like people feeling like they'd spoken for the first time, or pieces of the puzzle. So whether we could go into a school and just give that space that, hey, this is our story, you know?
Yeah, circles. It's almost like circles, and they could observe. Or, yes, you were saying that, thinking, wow, we could have. There's this wonderful video you might have seen with a woman in American prisons where she says, if you grew up in a household of violence, step forward. And so everyone, just different questions. But what it is as well, we could do a circle online with a few of us. How many? There's also this wonderful technology where you see people sitting in a circle, and we could record it, and we could share that with schools. Because I think it's important to, everyone will feel threatened and everyone will feel defensive. We could turn it around slightly and show that these things are here to support. And I think we talked about doing it through the whys, maybe. So we need some allies. But I think it's really important because we need to heal that level of suffering that are in men.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm there to support you, Chukes. So we've got a couple of minutes now. I would love you just to share a little bit about how we can support you. You've spoken about this center. Is there a kind of a fund me page that we can go to?
Yeah, there is not a fund me page at present, but there's a website which is www.goodwillatps.org.uk, and that will talk about, we are over this next month going to really launch. We need to raise $1.5 million to buy the property. The person who's selling to us has given us first refusal. It's a 10-acre farm with farmhouse stuff, and then we're going to have tiny houses and totally off grid, and then we're going to utilize it for glamping and stuff. So it's going to be a mixed economy, Monday to Thursday, looking after people who are feeling suicidal and befriending reality. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, people can rent it, either those people bereaved by suicide or people who want to just have a good time in beautiful Devon, and they'll pay a premium, which will go to fund the charity so people can stay for nothing. So that's the model, really. And then, I'm not going to run it, even though I was a founder. I will be one of the workers there, but I will have a grace and favor property, so my overheads, and then I won't need to earn lots and lots of money to prove how important I run a charity. So I really need to be in a charitable reality, and we also need to address some of the causes, like no housing, unaffordability, school. We're going to rewrite the economy. There's a wonderful Charles Eisenstein, I'm not sure if you come across his work, around sacred economics. So all that sort of stuff, we are moving. In America, trillions of dollars have gone into this. We're not quite there yet. People still, no, we can't afford £20 a week, universal credit. No, we need to still keep the arms race going, so all of that will go. And then we can invest in caring for people. So supporting me in anything in your local, try not to have too much anger, stay calm, because the calmness means we can come together under the law of love more than I'm right, you're wrong. You're not with me, chop your head off. And find out about your local suicide prevention action plans in your local authority. Find out how many people are dying by suicide. Think about what you could do. That wonderful Robert Kennedy, not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Yeah, really important. And remember, above all, it begins with you. You are you, and you have it in your heart to be able to respond. And courage, and the journey begins with one small step. So it's really important to feel safe enough, because sometimes you can release others in their suffering by you sharing your suffering. So one of the big things the government talks about, but it's not in the government, is safe to talk about suicide, because we have to heal. And the reason I want to say this, I should have said it to you earlier. We try not to use the word commit suicide. The reason is because up until 1963, it was an illegal act. And you had to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the person took their life by suicide. It was decriminalized. So we try not to use the word commit. We say person suicide, the person died by suicide, the person killed themselves. These languages are pure. It doesn't stigmatize the relatives because the relatives are 65%. If you've been bereaved by suicide intimately, you're 65% more at risk of losing your life to suicide as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why I said earlier that we're going to watch what we say, how we say it, and certain words will not be in the English language anymore because they don't have a resonatory healing reality.
Mm-hmm. 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 Wow, thank you. Well, I'll put all of those links, link to your website in the descriptions, and also the numbers and things like that, and I'll do that.
Oh, also, sorry, the other one, Piers, is www.actiontopreventsuicide.org. So they're two websites.
To prevent suicide.
And I'm happy to go out for talks. I'm happy to support people. I'm happy to receive calls. We're not a crisis service, but I'm happy for people to call me. It's 01803 226 227. That number, wherever I am in the country, or even if I'm not, comes through to my mobile phone. And it's like if someone picks up the phone and calls me when they're in that situation, I can respond. If I can't, I'll find out where they are and I can point them in the right direction or get some help. So that's the ability to respond. Yeah, is that.
Well, thank you for your courage and your generosity in supporting people out there.
Thank you for what you're doing. I think it's awesome.
Well,
I know you might not think so. But
yeah, thank you. Yeah, as I was sharing before we got on the call, I reached out about my book about CH, and I'm feeling really scared, and it's like so it's good to know that there are people out there.
I will walk alongside you in this one because it matters to me. It really does. It's a healing that needs to take place.
Thank you, Chukes. Well, thank you so much, and if you want to contact Chukes, then please do visit some of the links below or give him a call. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chukes. Bye-bye.
Take care.